Happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well.
Thank you very much.
I'm quite disappointed by Barack Obama's green tie is much better than mine. I think I've let the side down slightly.
It's a good nod to St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we're not starting with a St. Patrick's Day related story in the business news. We are going to go straight to that vote in Crimea and the market reaction to that.
Yeah, that's right. The markets had fallen, in fact, towards most of last week, in fact, over worries and those tensions between Russia and the West. It's looming over the Asian markets today, too, with some analysts saying it will be the dominant factor moving the markets this week. Japan's Nikkei hitting a 1 month low in trading earlier. It's down about 0.3% now. Hong Kong also in the red, fairly muted gains elsewhere. Now, it's not so much the result of the referendum that's moving markets. That was as largely expected, as we know, but instead what will happen next between particularly the EU and Russia and any potential sanctions that may come down the line. That's what the markets are watching closely for. Of course, in times of uncertainty, investors do flee to safe haven assets, chief among them gold, and the price of gold spiking slightly in trading after that result of the referendum in Crimea. You can see the COMEX index up about 0.3% in trading there.
OK, so much for the markets. What's happening in the companies sector right now?
We'll start with news from the Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba, which is set to list its shares for sale in the United States in what's expected to be the biggest stock market launch since Facebook. The news comes after months of speculation over whether the firm would choose to list in the US or Hong Kong. Alibaba sells some $150 billion worth of merchandise annually, more than eBay and Amazon combined. Shares in one of its major stakeholders, Japan's SoftBank, up around 6% in Tokyo today. Vodafone is said to have reached a deal to buy the Spanish cable company Ono for €7.2 billion. The Financial Times says the deal will be officially announced later. Ono is Spain's second biggest provider of broadband, pay TV and home phone services. It's Vodafone's second major acquisition in 6 months after it bought a controlling stake in Cable Deutschland. And Guinness has pulled its sponsorship of the New York St. Patrick's Day Parade in a controversy over the exclusion of gay groups from the event. It follows a similar move by rival brewers Heineken and Sam Adams in Boston. These images from the parade in Boston on Sunday. Guinness's parent company Diageo says it had hoped the New York parade's policy of excluding LGBT groups would be reversed before the event, but it was left with no choice but to drop its sponsorship plans.
There we go, some St. Patrick's Day controversy there in the business world. We're going to look to Sweden next. Saab making a big bet on a Swiss deal to buy its fighter planes.
You might remember the disappointment from France's Dassault when the Brazilian Air Force chose to buy jets from Sweden, from Saab, rather than from them. Swiss voters next set to cast their ballot on a deal, a $3.2 billion deal, in fact, to buy 22 of the Gripen fighter jets for its Air Force. But a survey published on Sunday shows the unpopular deal may not pass. Saab, meanwhile, has admitted it was badly advised over the Swiss vote after a campaign donation of $200,000 was returned to the company. Our correspondent Malcolm Brabant reports from Sweden.
Sweden's top military export has gone into service in South Africa and Thailand. Recently, Brazil agreed to buy 36 Gripens for $4.5 billion. To American disappointment, the Brazilians chose the Gripen, not least because the hourly flying costs of the Swedish plane are less than half that of its US rival.
Countries are starting to talk, can they afford an air force and also a navy and the army, or do they have to choose? And we say you don't have to choose, but you have to select a fighter that gives you high capability but lowering your operating costs.
Despite the current success, there's uncertainty at the factory over whether the company can clinch the sale of 22 Gripens to Switzerland. Opponents of the deal have managed to secure a referendum, which will be held in the middle of May. The latest polls suggest that it's touch and go, with those in favour just ahead. This is the Gripen at a firing range in Switzerland, where Saab has been criticised for donating $200,000 to the Yes campaign.
We normally do not support campaigns like that. Because we don't interfere in the political processes. Several people convinced us that this was the way things are going in Switzerland. Obviously, that was not a very good advice. So we backed out of that. There is no Saab money in the campaign.
Saab hopes the controversy will not affect the proposed sale and that Swiss voters will follow the advice of the country's Air Force, which is convinced that the Gripen is the right plane for the future.
Go, some tense times for Saab in Sweden. Stephen, we're going to finish on an upcoming investment that might be pretty exciting for fashion lovers.
Yeah, the owner of Jimmy Choo says they're considering floating the brand on the stock market in London. The Swiss group Labelux bought the well-known brand in 2011 for more than 620 million euros. Sources say the flotation on the London market would value the company at almost 1.2 billion. The question remains, though, is because we, of course, don't know the share price yet. How many Jimmy Choo shares do you think you'd need to buy a pair of Jimmy Choos? They're around €400. I did look it up earlier.
For one pair, you did look it up. That's
So
not
we
just
need-
knowledge that you had already.
Not just knowledge I already had, but I'm imagining you'll need quite a few shares to be able to actually buy a pair of the shoes.
And to afford perhaps the osteopathy afterwards after you've been wearing them on those cobbles that I saw in your footage. Very bad idea to wear high heels on cobbles, I have to say. Thanks very much, Stephen Carroll, with the business news there. We're going to move on now to web news, starting with Parisians' online responses to the ongoing air pollution.
Scores of Parisians